What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, it's time to go back to play Mega Man 3. We're continuing the franchise, first time playing any of these games. I played 1, I played 2. My opinion of them started to evolve, and I gotta say, after playing 3, I look back, and it's not necessarily a trilogy, but we've completed 3 games here, although I haven't actually beaten any of them. And I think 2 it's undeniable how good 2 is. The music, the bosses, that balance of stressful and being very difficult, but at the same time being very rewarding. I don't want to make it too much of a Mega Man 2 video, but I look back at the video I made on Mega Man 2, what I think of Mega Man 2. I think that's the best game. Mega Man 3, I gotta be real. Mega Man 3 was frustrating. It really frustrated me, and I'm gonna try to convey my emotion as I was going through this game. But I also have to say, and I felt bad about this, I failed when I played Mega Man 2. A thing that made it, I think, so good, like I said, was that balance between being hard and being just a good game. And I made it through all the bosses. Now, then when they do kind of like the boss gauntlet thing on you, I couldn't make it through that. But I got very far. And, Mega Man 1, I freaking sucked at it, right? It really took me to Mega Man 2. Mega Man 3, I fire this thing up, right? And I see the names. I gotta say, I know a lot of them, at least I think actually all of them in this game, but maybe generally, they're fan submissions, right? They got like 50,000 submissions for like what these bosses were gonna be. They picked 8 of them. Are they cool in like their abilities once you fight them? Yeah, I guess, but also I think they're kind of getting more and more silly as these games go along. Like just some of the names and some of the, locations or powers, I just wasn't feeling it. So, you first see, the grid and you see, okay, which one of these suckers is going to get it first? And, I started to go through them, and I think the first time, well, number one, there was none of them that I could beat like on the first go around, and even like playing it several times, when I would get angry, I would just exit the stage and pick a different stage. But, like I said, Mega Man 1, I only beat like a couple of them, maybe like 2 or 3. Mega Man 2, I beat all of them, and I felt really good about myself. Mega Man 3, it is, I believe, it's not all that well put together. Now, I know, looking back at the history of it, several things went wrong / has been talked about with Mega Man 3. The lead supervisor left after 2. I know a lot of people in the studio were talking about that. They felt rushed, and they felt they had to push things for the deadline, and they didn't even want to ship the game in its current state. They wanted to polish it a little bit more. Now, the critics and the praise that the game got didn't really reflect a game that, like you could tell, or at least they thought, needed more work. Looking back at it, like 30 plus years later, yeah, we have a different, way of looking at things, I guess, but I can tell you, you can feel it. In my opinion, the levels are just nowhere near as good as 2. The music is nowhere near as good as 2. The bosses and their names, their powers, all of that was nowhere near as good as 2. The balance. Now, again, like I've read things where Mega Man 3 was considered, or people did think it was too difficult. I mean, I would say yes, that's true. Like I had a lot of trouble with this game, but I almost feel like that's not an opinion. Like I know, look, when games are hard, you have the back and forth of like, is the game too hard? I just didn't feel like this game had it. And I mean, I just played Mega Man 2 like a few months ago. I remember how it felt playing Mega Man 2, how the levels functioned and got you from point A to point B. I wasn't feeling it. Now, there were literally times in Mega Man 3 where the game would clip me and I would die. The stupid Snake Man, or whatever his goddamn name is, I played his level roughly 20 plus times, and I would always get towards the end where like the platforms would raise and stuff, and so often would I be kind of on the edge and the platform would raise, and sometimes the game thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to clip Alex off of the platform, right, and just have him die. And that kind of thing happened several times in the game. I felt it just wasn't as like pinpoint accurate. Now, like, have they ever really been like that? Maybe not, but I've always felt there was a level of fairness, or at least there was in Mega Man 2, where you're building and you're getting these powers and you're figuring out which power kind of works best for the others. Now, like, this game is not all bad. Like, the slide thing I actually think is really cool. I think the slide is a cool mechanic. I think it looks cool. They use it pretty well. Rush the dog, I think, is really cool. I think the name is Breakman, which is the, very much like, almost like your clone, right, that you face in a mini boss type form in every level. And I had no idea, like, what I was getting in for. I don't look at these games, before I jump into them. And so, you jump in and it's all about, getting to that end boss, right? But then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I have to deal with, something like this. I felt the enemies, though, weren't as clever, and they weren't as, like, nicely designed as what we've seen in the past. I just feel a lot of the elements that I really started to appreciate. And again, like, I'm relatively new to the franchise, right? I kind of got my feet wet with 1, got punished, got absolutely destroyed, but, like, went into 2 with a mindset of, okay, like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to follow it through. And 2 is just a masterpiece. And then you go into 3, and I felt good. Going into 3, I was super excited, and I was like, okay, and I'm still excited. Like, I want to play 4, and, we're going to keep going through as many of these as I can do. But, going into 3, I was like, okay, we're ready to freaking rock. I handled 2 rather well. You're getting used to the dog. You're getting used to, doing mini bosses and stuff. But overall, you immediately jump in, and it's like, oh, I don't know if, like, just the platforming is as good, and the placement of it almost felt, at least in the beginning, it felt like certain things were meant to hit you, even though, obviously that's probably not true. I will say it still does capture, like, at the end of the day, it does capture probably the most important thing for any Mega Man game to do, which is that reward or that feeling inside of yourself when you accomplish something. So when I would make it to the gate that led to the boss, right, I would feel freaking good, because it doesn't take 1 or 2 attempts. It takes multiple attempts to get to that point. And I will say this. I beat, I believe, 5 of them. I only beat 5. Now, I mean, that's most of them, but it's not all of them. I regressed from Mega Man 2. But I did get to the boss fight in all of them. And some of those bosses were unbelievable. Even the other ones that I actually managed to beat, Needleman, etc. Like, you would get there and they'd be doing some wild stuff. And it'd be like, okay, I've got 1 life left because I lost all of my lives, getting to. Again, like, that's the balance I think that it lost, because Mega Man 2, I feel like the levels are just so perfectly, constructed. 3, they're more challenging, but I also think they're more unfair. So by the time you get to the end of the level, you have 0 to 1 lives left, right? So it's like, okay, this is your final life, or maybe you get 1 more attempt at this boss. And if the boss is the first time you're getting to it and it just absolutely crushes you, then, then you're going to have to restart the level. Now, again, I will say, to be fair, that is the formula generally, and there is still that thing inside you where it's like, okay, well, we'll push through, right? Like, if you made it to the end of the level once, you can do it again. And now this time when you get to the end of the level, try to have, like, an extra life. So how you do that, maybe you just run away from enemies, or maybe you start to kind of figure stuff out and learn when to take your shots, or exactly where to take your shots, right? Maybe you use rush in a different way than you were before, like, whatever it might be, and you learn that stuff. And, again, like, I think generally the levels are okay. I think they do take too long to kind of get into the groove, but I will say my arch nemesis in this game was Snake Man or whatever, and that level is a joke. It's an absolute, it feels longer than any of the other levels, and I just died repeatedly. I don't think a level beat me so bad. And one time I put my controller down. I think I actually turned the game off, left, and then came back and said, no, I'm not letting it do this to me. Like, I'm going to get through the level. And I did. But I do feel, just in general, the levels are kind of lacking anything special. Like, I feel like it's a little bit more of like a bland visual type thing. And look, I'm not going to judge the late 1980s. This might have been 1990. I'm not going to judge it too severely, in terms of its look, but, the vibrancy, right? And, like, the colors and just the diversity of, like, the levels and their look. It just did look bland, and they repeated a lot of enemy types that, I mean, there was repeating enemy types before, but it just felt overused now. I really think the best part of any of these maps now, there were a couple of them, those disappearing blocks made a reappearance, and they kicked my butt last, I think it was maybe in Mega Man 2, where, you have to almost plan out, okay, this one's going to appear here, so you got to be in the air ready to go. Mega Man 3's got a level that I think is more unfair with the disappearing blocks, but I actually got it, like, immediately. I was kind of, like, in the zone, because this really hurt me, and it really, changed my way of thinking about it, a couple months ago. I gotta be able to figure it out now, and I actually did, right? Look, I know a lot of this has been talking about the difficulty, and I don't necessarily want to do that, right? Because then you get into the arguments of, well, just tough it up, right? Like, just make it through, or, hey, this is just what games were like. like, back in 1990. And it's like, I do want to get across. I do think this is still a solid game. I'm happy that I'm going through the Mega Man games, but coming off of 2, and I keep going back to the music too. Like, the music was nowhere near as good in 3 as 2. But I kept thinking, I want to like it. I'm getting better at these. It's not like I'm getting worse. I'm definitely getting better at them. I really enjoyed my time in 2, and I was ready, like, in my head. You don't want to get too cocky, but in my head, I was like, oh, I'm ready to take out all of 3. I'm gonna not necessarily, like, coast by, but it's like, I'm gonna get through all of these bosses, and, I'm trying to do better than I did the time before. It was just the ending of 2 that got me, because it's in the way that it goes. So 3, it's like, okay, let's see if I can get, one step further. I regressed. And I do think I felt that it was just a little bit more unfair than the previous game. But I'm glad I'm going through it. And I also this can't be a Mega Man video on Back to the Past before I go over one other thing, which is the cover art, right? So we've constantly looked at the other 2. And 3, I've had as my background here, the good one. The good background is this one. Then you have the other cover art. And we keep saying it. I really just don't understand. Well, no, actually, people in the comments have actually been pretty nice and have gone through the reasonings of, like, why they think the marketing department has kind of changed, like, Mega Man's look to, just make it maybe look more masculine or look more like human-like versus what it is here. But I did just want to show you, the difference. May I say, it's been a while since I've looked at, like, Mega Man 1 and 2's art. 3's bad art is probably the worst, of any of them. So just to throw that out there. But hey, I'm making my way through them. I would one day maybe like to go back and try to actually beat these games, but I got really close with 2. 1, maybe I would need to give a second try to. 3 just kind of broke me. Like, 3, I talked about that in 1 and 2, right? Where it's like, 1, because I was going in, just as a baby, right? I wasn't even like a man yet with that one. It's like, okay, let's see how difficult. Like, what is this game? I mean, I know what the games are like, but it's like, okay, well, let me try to experience it. And then 2, it's like, okay, I'm getting the swing of things. 3, I really let get to me, because there were sometimes I would die and I would just sit there just like with a blank stare and be like, I don't really understand what I'm doing wrong. And there was nothing worse, like I said, than getting to the boss. So conquering these extremely difficult levels, getting to the boss, and then the boss is moving faster than I've ever seen before, firing shots in every single direction. My reflexes aren't fast enough to figure it out and plan it. Oh, and that was my last life. So now I can't even start there. Now I got to start at the beginning of the level, and there's a 50-50 shot I'll even make it to the end again, because maybe I got lucky, on my way there. But I am glad I'm playing through it. You let me know what your experience playing Mega Man 3 is. I saw a lot of people that said 2 is the best one. I saw people saying, like, hey, 3 is actually really good. A lot of people like 3. I think you can tell it is, whether you want to call it unfinished or unpolished, I think you can tell. I really do. I think I saw in a comment, I think on the Mega Man 2 one, that 3 was regarded as that, but I half forgot it, and then, you play the game, and it feels more rough around the edges. It feels like the care wasn't put into 3 as much as 2, so then I started thinking about it again. I read about it, just now, and, kind of see the details, the behind-the-scenes stuff, so I feel like it's a game that is in line. It has the potential. It is a solid game, but I really think, maybe it's because it was rushed or whatever the situation might be. It could have been a lot better. So we've definitely gone down now. So now it's Mega Man 4's time. You guys let me know in the comments what I should know, going into Mega Man 4. But let me know what you think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.